start. So when we can identify what to replicate where and what might differ in a given place, then we can also, try and assist this. And this is one thing that we might look into. And then again, for example, for softwares or depending on methodologies that are used, some can be adopted in one region, or it might be slightly different in another region. So for example, we had a training where we were giving early career professionals a training on ocean color remote sensing. And the examples that were being given were, for example, for the temperate region. So after that, then the trainees decided, like, how can we develop this to fit Africa or my region that could be in the tropic of another place? So looking into what can be replicated and what can be adjusted is also another mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. And thank you, Harriet, for that question. We have a raised hand from Myla, who's also one of our panelists later. So Myla, you have the floor.
Thank you, Johanna. So Gabriel, thank you so much for this presentation. It was really clear. I could really understand everything that you were trying to communicate, really. And I was particularly happy to see that together with the technical and scientific skills, your program also takes in consideration the importance of other kind of skills as well, or other kinds of approaches, such as, for example, having games, or having these moments where the whole group can kind of interact and have a better integration. So I thought that was really nice. And I don't know, I imagine from a scientific perspective, that's something that we won't see really often as something to be considered in an atmosphere to also improve our abilities even to create knowledge or to develop knowledge. So I was very curious, actually, if you could share a little bit more on the experiences that the group, your group, is having with these intercultural skills. I think that's super interesting, and I would like to know what kind of approaches you have had contact with, and also if there is a component within the program that goes more into the how the scientists that are being trained can actually contact and have a bigger impact on this interface of science to policy. If you have any kind of trainings in that sense, to contact a decision maker, or, to try to start a conversation with them, and how you can actually have an impact on such processes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Myla, for that question. Yeah, actually, as you mentioned, it is an interesting, component to really be aware of the intercultural differences and also bring this on board. So in the program, this was taken into consideration. For example, we had different courses, and I remember after every 1 or 2 weeks course, we would either decide that one person from a given country, so an important dish from their country we would have that as dinner, and then everyone learns how to do it, and then we do it together. So in the long run, we had an international cookbook that I can share with the group from our from our team, and then also other aspects of intercultural aspects that we also shared. For example, running with athletics for this given group, different dances. So if we just came together in such informal activities that we did together. So we brought this and it worked out well. And then on the other aspect of science to policy, this is also something that is also really important. For example, in our group, we were taught like how do you first of all, approach an interview scenario. So this would enable us, after this, how do we move ahead? And then also going on with this, there are moments that the group, our coordinators called for policymakers within Germany. and then we could share our scenarios from our places. So one way is through, inviting them within the group. So if we have a given group, and then we can share how it is in our places and how it is in this country, for example. And then also through links. So our coordinators also just linked up us and also invited us to give talks in other activities. For example, I remember giving a talk in the Rotary Club for Heligoland. So through this, we are brought in the picture to reach out to these policymakers and tell them what is within our program, and also from an international point of view, and also participating in the ECOP program. If I can now come, for example, to the ECOP program, this is one thing that we are taking forward to enhance participation of ECOPs. For example, we are strengthening the need to have ECOPs included in the national ocean decade committees. So through this, they are going to have a say, and they're able to share their experiences, challenges, and needs. And this can be taken up for integration into the Blue Economy agenda, into the ocean decade activities. And then we'll really have a strengthened science policy interface. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. And Myla, Eugenia, your turn.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much, Joanna. Gabriel, thank you as well very much for the presentation. That was really very interesting and very inspiring. Really tackled a lot of very interesting aspects of such a capacity development opportunity. So I have a few questions that I think are closely related to the previous set of questions. So I was wondering whether you are kind of still in touch with your group, and whether you have been having any scientific projects together since then, or if you have been involved in any capacity in some activities together since then in the time after you have completed the course. And another related question is, given the intercultural atmosphere of the group, have you experienced any other any interesting aspects of work ethics, for example, or that would come from another culture or country that you have never known before? Anything that is related to how they approach a scientific project, or how they do science, or how they actually perform a work task, etc. So from your personal experience, have you noticed anything really like work related that would be drastically different from what you were used to? Yeah, I would be very much interested in these aspects. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Eugenia, for the question. Yeah, so in the first question, scientific project and carrying forward from the training that we got. So this is also one thing, for example, at Alfred Wegener Institute, where the training is hosted. As I mentioned, they also tend to enhance, strengthen career development of the trainees. So, for example, personally, from here, I communicated with one of the professors, who, after that, then we were able to develop a proposal, and it was funded through the DAD, and now I was able to come back and start my PhD in the same institute. And there are also a number of colleagues who either get job in the institute or other related institutes like Helmholtz institutes. So just coming back to the aspect of sustainability, it's one thing that has been strengthened. And also we have the NANO program, that is the Nippon Foundation Alumni Network, that we also have as part of this. So through this, we are able to we have a group through which we have different trainees from other years, and also those who just participated in the shipboard training. So in this, different publications we are able to share, different scientific questions we are able to share, and then also trainees who are from a given region can also share. For example, if they have an event, then they are able to work together in that region and also still link up. Yeah, so this group also supports some of the scientists. For example, a colleague of mine in Kenya just got one of the loggers that they can use to do some oceanographic data collection. So this is an approach that is working and it's going on. We are keeping in contact and we are carrying on well sustainably. On the other aspect of intercultural experience and work ethics, actually coming from different countries and staying and working together, we learn a lot on how different it is. So also different participants give the scenarios in their home countries. For example, there are countries that are mentioned at, for example, hard science or STEM, if I can say so, is more or less for the male scientists, and then the ladies or girls are more or less towards social sciences, but then when we integrate together, go out for field work together, go out for shipboard training together, then they also have a different, they're able to see a different scenario where they realize that everyone can do it. And they also say that when they go back to their home countries, then they can also strengthen that girls can also participate in some of these activities. So this is one thing that I was able to see, and also differences with regards to religion and how we integrate this together. So for example, when it is a holiday, for example, a New Year in Vietnam, and here we are in March or April, then we celebrate together, or on that special day, then so and so, maybe we excuse them from going for fieldwork or something, but then we understand all these differences, and it's just amazing how coming together and working together let us learn how things work in different locations or regions of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you to our panelists, Eugenia, for all your
Yeah,
questions.
thank you so much. It was really very interesting. Thank you, Gabriel, for your feedback.
Yes. Actually, Gabriel, there are some questions in the chat box as well. Jay Perlman was asking for a copy of your presentation, and Sarah is also asking about the duration of the training. So if you don't mind, Gabriel, can you put your email address in the chat box so people can just reach out for any questions about the Center of Excellence program of POGO. And now we can proceed with our second speaker. I'm very happy that he was able to make it despite some technical issues. We have Mr. Hari Mahardika, who is the section head of Fishery Product Technology of Tangerang Region C in Indonesia. And he will be presenting about his traineeship experience with the Partnerships in Environmental Management for the Seas of East Asia, or PEMC. Harry, thanks for
Hi.
joining us. Would you like to share your screen for your presentation?
Okay. Did you get my presentation? Everybody?
Yes, we can see your screen now. Can you start the slideshow and you can start? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johanna, for the opportunity. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you on Ocean Practice Workshop. Let me share to all of you the best practice in development global ocean science, capacity development for sustainable coastal management. Let me introduce myself. My name is Hari Mahardika. I'm from Tangerang Regency. I'm representative from Tangerang Regency who implementing integrated coastal management in Indonesia. From beginning, we just have 6 sites to implementing integrated coastal management, but recently we got a new member just joining with us, South Bangka, Gorontalo, and Jakarta. in 2017, we has opportunity to participate in PEMC traineeship program, where I'm spent 2 months in the Philippines to gain more learning about tool and process to facilitating the implementing integrated coastal management in Tangerang. The other aim of the traineeship program is increase awareness of the strategies, objective activities, and promoting to facilitating the implementing integrated coastal management in Tangerang. My traineeship was developed and designed to identify need of Tangerang Regency and desired outcome in line with its step in the integrated coastal management program cycle. So what is ICM or integrated coastal management? It's a dynamic, multidisciplinary, and iterative process to promote sustainable coastal management. It's cover full cycle to preparing, initiating, developing, adopting, implementing, and refining the ICM or integrated coastal management process. In this traineeship, we get important and valuable information how to start implementing the integrated coastal management project, also communicating with the people, engage the youth and student, how important the information. So we have integrated information management system training, how important information compile and serve the data to our leader, make regulation and policy. The good thing of we learn from the master and see how the work on the field. So this is the example with the 3D watershed map. So we are know how to solve our problem. After the traineeship, we got the opportunity to lead several projects based on good practices, tool, and skill I gained to organize and replicating integrated coastal management project. We start with real condition in Tangerang Regency. So we are assess our coastal condition. At the time we find we just have 79.2 hectare of mangrove, and with the 579 hectare of abrasion. So for solve our problem, we have approach. First is rehabilitating the coastal with the multi-species and multi-technique approach. We also engage from the private company to rehabilitate our coastal with different kind of mangrove. This example, we have support from Indonesia Power, electricity power plant. It's also we have MOU to develop Sonerasia alba with other private company, also with pulp and paper company. We develop kind of mangrove Avicennia marina. We also engage youth and students to increase their awareness. Hopefully, they also can be leader in the future, and then spread out of our ideas. We also using public awareness to radio and newspaper. Totally starting this project, we already planned more than 1.5 million of stem of mangrove with the totally 16 species of kind mangrove. This is feedback from the nature that starting from 2017 today, the nature give us response. Actually, today we have 3 kind of species of Tachypelus. That's as a bioindicator that the environment already increased the quality. This is initial result. Today, our mangrove reached 121 hectares. As I have mentioned in the traineeship, was to design by identify need in habitat protection and community development in Tangerang Regency. So the whole cycle of traineeship is embedded in each stage of integrated coastal management cycle. Also, we are develop my skill by actually doing and becoming involved in the process. So learning by doing and hand-on approach, we were very effectively. Then now, when I complete my traineeship, the ICM in the place with the strong coordination mechanism. Ms. Johanna, it's end of my presentation. The time is back to you, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Harry. Nice to see you again and to be working with you again. Thank you for joining us. I think that you've identified very good practices that somehow relate to the plenary discussion yesterday, especially on the importance of co-designing to encourage collaboration and ownership of capacity development efforts on the ground, where the local government has a buy-in in the program, right? Yeah, so I think we can wait for the plenary for the panel discussion. If there's any question or comments on Harry's presentation, we can do that later at the open Q&A. So thank you very much again, Harry. And yeah, you can stop sharing your screen and we can proceed with the next speaker, Brian Arvik, a professor from the Department of Earth and Environmental Science of University of Michigan. I'm very happy to see you, Brian. Thanks for making it in the session. And would you like to share your screen, or would you like me to do that for you? Okay, great.
I can do it if that's all right.
All right, thank you.
So you can see the slides and hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Clearly.
great.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm really sorry that I'm late. I had trouble figuring out how to log in, but I'm going to talk about the Coastal Ocean Environment Summer School in Ghana, which is in Nigeria and Ghana. COSING, the website is here. This is a project we've been running for many years, 9 years, many collaborators, and it's an endorsed project of the UN decade. And these are pictures from the Ghana school in 2016 and 2018. So what it is it's a 1-week ocean science summer school. We've been holding it for 1 week every year in either July or August in West Africa. So from 2015 to 2019, we held in-person schools in Ghana. Then, of course, when the pandemic hit, we had to go virtual. So we had 2 years of virtual schools. And in January 2021, we threw in an extra one as well, extra virtual event. And this year, a bunch of firsts. So it was the first time we went to Nigeria, a new country, which happens to be Africa's most populous country. First year back since the pandemic started. And it was the first time we had a hybrid in-person online school. So lots of firsts. This picture here is from the University of Lagos in Nigeria's capital city. So we have about 100 to 120 African participants a year, about 10 to 40 US participants per year. Since 2016, the first school we held was pretty small, but it's been about this large ever since. And on both sides, US and African, we have undergrads, grad students, postdocs, faculty, private sector workers, and government workers. So it's predominantly university people, but not all university people. And we have had a few Europeans come as well. And you know, everyone's welcome, but and we've actually in recent years with the online, we've had people participating from Asia and other parts of Africa. So we have lectures, labs, computer programming workshops, field trips, short projects, and participant presentations. And you know, the need. So Joanna asked me to talk briefly about the need. I think the need is simply that there are not very many ocean scientists in Africa taking measurements and being involved in big global programs as much as the rest of the world, and not just Africa, but other parts of under-resourced countries as well. And there's also, I think, a big need to connect US scientists in the US and other higher resource nations with scientists and under-resourced nations. My experience as doing a lot of high-powered research, I'm funded by 5 federal agencies, is that there's a lot of goodwill. People want to start collaborating with scientists abroad, but most US scientists don't even know how to start doing it. They just don't know how to make those connections. And so I think things like this summer school can help start doing that in a small way. So networking, capacity building, and connecting ocean scientists in under-resourced nations. My focus is African nations, but not exclusively, with scientists elsewhere. So we have some statistics on, you know, how many people have come, and we always have them fill out survey forms. So that's, you know, outcomes. But I personally like to tell a few inspirational stories about outcomes. So Richmond Kennedy Kwarku has been a participant every single time. And at the very first summer school that we held, he talked about how he thought plastic was a huge problem. And frankly, at that time, I didn't even appreciate how right he was, as I don't really study plastics in my research, but he's really right. Plastics is a huge problem. And now he has this very inspiring NGO called Plastic Punch and does a lot of beach cleanups. And I think he's just becoming more and more visible. And he credits our school as part of what got him going on this. And maybe he's being generous there. He's a very charismatic speaker, and I think he would have done fine even without us. But I think we did help him with some connections, and certainly got him connected to a lot of scientists. We brought him to the AGU Ocean Sciences meeting where he met people like Martin Bisbeck and others. So we count him as a success story. And another one is Mumin Oladipo, who's shown here. So he's a Nigerian, and he was having a lot of trouble collecting data for his PhD thesis because there was a lot of power problems. That basically, it took a lot of power to run the instrument, and he didn't have enough money to do that. So he learned computer programming in our school, and then he used a Raspberry Pi to run his instrument much more cheaply And that allowed him to collect data for his science. So he, as another person like Richmond, who started coming as a participant, but now is one of our instructors. And he's shown here with Paige Martin, my former PhD student, who taught him how to use Python. So we also have numerous stories of participants who've learned how to download satellite observations and use them in their research, including fisheries research, where temperature, which can be measured from satellites, is an important variable, for instance. We have many return participants, people who come again and again on both sides, which shows that, they're really energized by the program and want to continue in it. And the early career return participants organize the school schedule, act as instructors, and organize participant presentations. So this year we had a return participant, Roland, who basically ran one of the valuable sessions we had where participants were able to give presentations on their work. Also this year, more than ever before, we had a whole bunch of Nigerian participants who said, you need to have more social media. So they actually set up Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook pages for our school. They did that themselves, and they updated our Twitter site, which had been a little bit inactive for several months. So I think seeing the participants themselves, some of them said things like, in my 15 years of Nigeria, this is the best thing that I've ever been involved in, and let's try to really grow this. And so that brings me to our ideas for growth. So we have this program called Ocean Core, endorsed by the UN Decade, and we really appreciate that. And our basic idea is to make oceanography more truly global, so that when scientists are doing big global programs, it's not just people from the US and Europe and so forth running them, but people from around the world. And the way I like to think of it, again, as someone who spends a lot of my time doing research, is that most researchers in the US know researchers in Europe and Japan and collaborate with them at places like that. But I'd like to get it to the point where they just automatically know a few researchers in Africa that they can pull into any big global project they're doing. Because right now, again, I think a lot of scientists in places like the US, they want to do these kind of things, but they just don't know many scientists in Africa, or they don't even know how to meet them. That's the impression I get on the research side. So if we could get some funding for Ocean Core, we'd basically start running a lot more summer schools around the world, because we have this successful model. So, we've been doing it in Ghana. This is my last slide. Now we've shown we can do it in Nigeria. Again, it was hosted by University of Lagos and the Nigerian Institute for Oceanography and Marine Research. And we already have serious requests at kind of the vice chancellor level to do another school in Nigeria. So people came to us and said, the part called South-South, they said, like, if you could get the money together with them, run another one there. And Nigeria, again, is Africa's most populous country. So it makes sense to have another one in that part of Nigeria together with the one we're already running in Lagos and Ghana. But of course, that means we need to find funding. So I'm pretty convinced that if we found enough funding, you could inspire many people around the world to travel and start building up these networks as we've started to do in West Africa. And then things just start building. I mean, we just found out that NSF on the US side is going to fund a proposal we have to do sediment coring, which is pretty serious, expensive science in West Africa, as long as we can get a ship. They just said, as long as you find a ship, we'll do it. So we're working on that with people from Neomar and University of Ghana. So, it'll just keep growing. And I think that, we need funding. So, sorry, that wasn't exactly necessarily a best practices talk, but I guess best practice for the oceanography community is that it should be a truly global community. And so we need more programs like this, in my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brian. That's a very interesting presentation. And thank you for all the noble work that you do in Africa and other parts of the world. Um, Indeed, yes, I asked the presenters to identify the needs, the gaps, and the capacity that their programs are trying to address. And yeah, Brian has really identified those gaps and how the program has successfully addressed those gaps with very inspiring success stories. So thank you for that to our
Thanks.
three speakers, Brian, Gabriel, and Harry. And well, other than the challenges that they raised and they mentioned, one of the basic challenges, I think, in capacity development as well, especially for the early career ocean professionals, that was raised during the plenary discussion was actually the information regarding the various capacity development offers or opportunities that there are, and and various parts of the world. And I just want to share very quickly a very recent um, project with the that we are doing here at the, hold on, I hope you can see my screen, that we are doing here at the IOC. This is the capacity development compendium. The question is where to look for those opportunities. So there was a meeting of the working group of the group of experts earlier this year, and there was a request to develop a compendium of capacity development activities offered by other global and regional programs other than IOC, UN specialized agencies, intergovernmental organizations. And so we started hiring a consultant to do a work and to develop this compendium. So the exercise provided us several conclusions. There is a clear need for an online platform where users can search for a broad range of CD activities and opportunities around the world, which is so far, I think that right now it's really like scattered all over the place. So we would like to provide a single place where they can actually search for these activities and perhaps do also a matchmaking of users and providers around the world. So the quality of information is also varies a lot amongst organizations. So we would like to organize that and present it in a more user-friendly approach. So there's also information discovery exercise for the database and prototype development, where we highlight gaps and the capacity development strategy of IOC. And other issues as well, such as language barriers, geographical gaps, etc. So we sourced information from existing database that are publicly available, and some of activities and opportunities listed. The content majority is lifted directly from organizational website with as little modification as possible. It is high level. The current prototype is limited to ongoing CD activities and programs. So these are active programs. And the scope is, of course, broader than the IOC mandate, which addresses the need of also the ocean decade, the capacity development that the ocean decade needs, which could be broader than the IOC mandate, but also include ocean science. So this is a very quick look of the prototype that we are currently developing. This is still, we are still addressing some bugs and some other issues. This is called the Ocean CD Hub that aligns with other IOC platforms. So here you can see some of the buttons that reflect different types of capacity development activities, and you can see scope notes in each button to describe the type of the capacity development activity or opportunity there is. So we are still developing this, and for the next steps, we are looking at launching this before the year ends, and definitely we will be updating you with the progress that we make in developing the capacity development compendium. And hopefully this will address that challenge of a single online database where users can search and match different kinds of capacity development offers that are existing. So now we proceed with the next half of the session. I know it's already end of the hour. We have like 30 minutes extension that we mentioned, but yes. So our panelists for today, we have three lovely ladies who were able to join us today. I'd like to introduce them. Eugenia Costiana, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, who is the lead of Communities of Practice and Capacity Development of the Decade, and the ECO Program Global Coordinator, Myla Gihon, who is a fellow at the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam, Germany, and of course Harriet Harden Davis, who's one of our experts and the director. Congratulations for the new job of the Nippon Foundation Ocean Voices program at the University of Edinburgh. So I think I have, well, if I may ask our three panelists to just provide 3 to 5 minutes of your views on the following. Hold on, I'm not supposed to share this one. But yeah, to give your views or insights from the presentations and also from the questions that we circulated regarding successful capacity development programs and the development of best practices on capacity development and promoting its wide use, its creation, adoption, and replication. Who wants to go first? Eugenia, perhaps you want to go first, and yes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, and thank you very much for sharing the latest news on developing this initiative and the platform on funding and capacity development opportunities, because this is really very important, and this is something that we have been thinking about at the ECO program. So we are in an endorsed UN Ocean Decade program. So that would be extremely helpful for recreation professionals, but also, I guess, for all the professionals working in the field. So it would be really great to have a look at that as soon as it is launched. So in terms of best practices, and based on what has been discussed today so far, I would definitely highlight the need to have this connection between academia and the job market, so that when a person chooses a path in the ocean field, they kind of know that they have the support, and then they know where they will be able to work afterwards. So as we are speaking globally, of course, that differs among countries. So in some countries, it's very clear path. So we have internships, traineeships, and various connections while you're studying at the university. Whereas in some other countries there is no such connection, and basically when you finish your degree, you can be left alone, and so you don't have any connections, you don't know how to proceed next, and you might just have to go another path and just completely leave the ocean path and go working in absolutely another field not related to science, just because you can't find a job, or which is another aspect, that job is very low paid. So I guess for that problem, there is a strong need for cooperation with with governments and with ministries of science or ministers of education, so that this connection is made stronger. And I guess maybe this can be an aspect of the work of national decade committees in a given country, so that they can really strengthen that that connection. So on another aspect, expeditions for purely ocean scientists and recreation professionals, expeditions are really something that is very much needed. And within our ECOP program, we have an endorsed project from the first call for decade actions which is called a floating university. So this project is from Russia, and they aim to gather all such projects within Russia from various regional seas to have it kind of in one program on one platform. So what they do is they go on a research cruise, and they have some students on board, but they don't just have them on board and teach them on board, but they also work with them afterwards. So they are able to introduce their research that they have done later at a conference. So they do posters. So they really teach them not just specific ship activities, but also like how to publish a paper, how to write a paper, how to present your research, etc. So I guess this is a very nice initiative that could be regarded as one of the best practices. So in terms of like what steps could be done to encourage, I guess, so one thing is really that these recommendations should be somehow taken to the level of, either the national decade committees, and they would be able to take it further to the ministries, and then really sharing those recommendations among ourselves, so among countries, so that institutions or ECOPs or ocean professionals can adopt them and introduce them in their own countries. Like I guess, for example, the summer school in Ghana and Nigeria are great examples of that kind. Right. Yeah. So and there are some organizational managerial aspects that I also wanted to highlight here, related to capacity development, such as visa issues and travel support. So as it has been widely discussed recently, ECOPs have had a lot of problems with going for the United Nations Ocean Conference in Lisbon, as well as in some other conferences where ECOPs were just not given visas, so they couldn't participate. And I know of the same issues for people who couldn't participate in just summer schools. So I guess this is really a big challenge for in terms of getting access to capacity development in various formats, as well as travel support. So yeah. So I guess this is my 5 minutes. So yeah, I'll just give the time to the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugenia. That's a very long list, but very, very useful. Thank you very much for sharing your views clearly from the ECOP perspective. I'm sure that they appreciate that. Perhaps we can call Myla to share her views. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna, and thank you, Eugenia, for your inputs. I think they were very important, especially from a more kind of practical perspective on how we can kind of address some of the capacity development challenges. On the other hand, here I think my contributions would be more a bit on how we could put some more effort in reflecting about capacity development and what kind of capacity development we would like to see, to plan, and to put into practice. So in terms of the so-called success stories, I kind of always see myself in this kind of discussion, what would actually represent success for capacity development. So are we talking about maybe number of participants in a determined event, or are we talking about number of hours dedicated into training tasks, or even number of publications? And I would like to provoke more or less our discussion into the direction that maybe the measurement of the success in capacity development could take a bit different approach, more thinking on an individual level. So basically, if after that experience, that task, that program, does the individual per se feel that he or she is more kind of independent or self-sufficient in a determined task that he or she might not perceive themselves before, do you know from where to start for the next chapter, maybe on this career or something related to what he just learned? Do you know, do they know who to talk to? Because that's a very important aspect. Capacity development is also, as many of our presenters says today, is also about networking. So of course, we have access to a determined content, but it's also important that we are able to reach to people that can kind of give us a bit more of guidance and pathway on how to keep going with our researchers and with our career goals. So that would be kind of my contribution to the first aspect, to basically think about what would actually be a successful capacity development activity or intervention. In terms of what steps are needed, I would like to I think also we should kind of have a good idea of what is going on within a certain aspect of capacity development. So how is that capacity development program actually taking place? Is like just a top down, or basically someone just coming and say, hey, so this is what we are learning or we are discussing today, or maybe this is something that is coming from bottom up. So basically people say, hey, we would like to know about this, or we need to have more training about this because our reality and because it makes sense in our reality. So also kind of analyze, does these people that are actually having contact with these capacity development opportunities, do they have a say on how these programs or activities are being built? What are their roles actually? Are they just kind of more observers of that activity, or persons who are receiving something or having access to a certain content? Who is promoting this capacity development? What are the main purposes and intentions behind the group or institution or organization that is actually promoting this capacity development? And what is actually the potential for this approach to actually make change or promote change within communities, within the audience to which this specific approach is targeting? Do you see if there is potential for long-lasting change for yourself or for your community within something that is happening within capacity development? In terms of now going to the third point on how to leverage these best practices, here I like to speak very, very briefly about two important aspects, or two aspects that I consider to be very important. Is for the first one is basically that we have our scientists, our lead scientists, our PIs, to have this acknowledgement that capacity development is something very important, even in the in producing science. So basically we need to have people who feel a purpose in what they are doing. They need to feel happy, they need to feel comfortable, so they can also be productive and come up with the important indexes that are now in place, kind of such as publications and hours and participation in events and so on. So basically we need to kind of develop this view, or having these professionals kind of more aware of the importance of establishing such accommodating and comfortable atmosphere, so that other early career researchers, for example, can put their full potential out there. And one other aspect is basically the importance of having a good alignment with the funding agencies, or having really the agencies who are proposing grants, programs, and so on, to also put capacity development at the forefront, and not necessarily as something that ends up happening in the middle of the way, or something that just happens naturally. In fact, capacity development needs to also be the main objective of doing science, producing science, and advancing as a society as a whole. And in terms of the generic best practices on capacity development, if there is a one cake recipe for it, I don't think we have dedicated yet enough efforts to know what should be this step-by-step approach. I don't think there is a cake recipe ready that we should just implement. I think that's something that it should be accommodated really from the needs of a group and a community, having from the beginning a great interaction, building trust, so we can actually understand what are the needs of a specific community or a specific group. And so in order for this to be actually addressed by the possibility of capacity development. So yeah, I don't think there is a cake recipe for it yet. Maybe at some point, if we start to really dedicate more efforts and more resources in knowing how capacity development could work, like in a more general sense, maybe we would have like more, let's say, high level steps or high level approaches on how to do it. But I don't think that we are there yet. Sorry, I have no idea about my time, so I'm just stopping right here.
Thank you very much, Myla, for another long list of thoughts to ponder. But those are really important questions that you raised, and I'm sure that it serves as teasers for our for us who are mostly involved with capacity development efforts. So we'll ask Harriet to for her 5 minutes and another long list, perhaps.
Thank you so much, Joanna. It's such a pleasure to be on this distinguished panel with old friends and new friends and colleagues as well. Regarding the first question on relating, and I don't have it in front of me, but the first question relating to the success stories, one of the key lessons that we've heard is that successful capacity development is depends on who is defining and measuring what success means. But perhaps the most successful initiatives are those that start by achieving a common understanding about what capacity development means in a given context and to who is involved and to who is benefiting. One of the challenges I think we've heard today, and I think we've all experienced, is that capacity development means very different things in different contexts. To some, it's about a person, to some, it's about an organization. Some think of it as a process to meet a self-identified needs. Some might see it as a partnership whereby there's a recognition of the different actors involved and there's measures in place to ensure that the partnership itself is an equitable one. But perhaps that isn't always the case. And so processes where there is very intentional reflection on who is involved, why they're involved, what the motivations are, and how the partnership is conceptualized as something where people are bringing something together and learning from each other in a very multi-directional or two-way approach, is certainly something that in the research that I've been involved in has certainly been a very important ingredient of success, that two-way conceptualization. And the third aspect relates to the outcomes. So often capacity development is discussed as a process or an activity, but I think one of the things that we've really heard from the presenters this morning, and especially Hari and Gabriel's presentations, about the outcomes that deliver lasting benefits to communities, and that there are different pathways to doing that, whether it's supporting a person when they go back home, or ensuring that person never leaves home but stays nested in their communities, delivering benefits to their communities. The second question was relating to and again, it would be very helpful if it was up, but I believe the second question was related. That's fine. I'm going to continue forward. The second question was relating to some of the different, thank you very much, Joanna, that is wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you. The steps needed. So there's three different steps that I'd just like to highlight here. The first is something that Evgenia touched on, which is about having policy processes in place that really help to institutionalize lasting capacity development. In a recent discussion we held in the margins of the BBNJ negotiations in New York, one of the ambassadors commented that we cannot expect capacity development to rest on the shoulders of a particular individual. It's very important to think about this as being an individual level thing, but we must find ways of institutionalizing capacity development so that we can support people to be really nested in their communities, to be connecting local needs, local voices with policy impact at national and global and regional levels. And there is a very important role for policy there in setting frameworks and sending signals to funders about capacity development. A second step here is in relation to developing the types of partnerships that really enable these lasting connections to take place and really set the tone for those spaces that do deliver very equitable outcomes. And a third step I'd like to suggest is about trialing different ways of conceptualizing and delivering capacity development processes and activities that are very geared towards outcomes. So to give one example of something that we're trialing at Ocean Voices are capacity development fellowships that are customized, that are hybrid in terms of their location and their focus, and are very tailored to meet individual self-determined needs. And that's something we'd be really happy to talk some more about offline. Regarding the third question, how to leverage best practice, one of the examples here about the important role of best practice approaches is in a declaration that was launched by the Alliance of Small Island States at the UN Ocean Conference in June this year. This declaration concerns the enhancement of marine scientific knowledge, research capacity, and the transfer of marine technology for small island developing states. The declaration recognises the critical importance of building partnerships and that there are diverse and persisting capacity gaps, suggesting that business as usual is not going to meet the needs that SIDS have identified themselves. What the declaration does is it sets out a series of principles for the establishment of partnerships. And this type of declaration, this type of best practice in creating a common understanding about the types of capacity development activities that are needed and work, and sending signals to different partners about the roles that they can play in capacity development can be very, very useful. So thinking about the fourth question, is there a generic best practice template? Having a single best practice template might be a challenge. Certainly having some overarching principle and guidelines could be a very useful place to start. But perhaps one way that we could think about, and perhaps some food for thought for discussion, would be to look at having different templates around a few themes. For example, different concepts of capacity development, whether we're thinking about an individual level or an institutional level or an organizational level. Another way would be to look at templates about different types of capacity development or different themes of capacity development. So there might be a couple of different ways of perhaps staggering that thinking around the template that would make more room for those different location and person specific contexts. I'm really looking forward to the discussion, and thank you so much for putting the questions up again and giving me the opportunity to be part of this. And I think that, as Myla said, we may not be ready to bake the cake yet, but with Gabriel's idea of the cookbook, I think that we can definitely think about that as having our different cake recipes for capacity development. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Harriet. Yeah, that's also a long list of questions, but very good question. Yeah, very thought-provoking questions. But I think that as an objective of this session, we are expected to provide recommendations to the OBPS, and I think that our panelists and our speakers were able to raise very important considerations on how we can on how to inform the development, for example, of the BP template on capacity development. For example, what Harriet was mentioning earlier about how some specific types of capacity development can guide development of a specific VB template on capacity development is a good starting point, at least. I know that there might be some questions on the floor based on this insights from our lovely ladies. So I want to open the last 5 minutes before we close the session to any question or comments from the floor. Is there a raise of hand or? Okay. Okay, I think everyone is good. We will be putting together a report based on the discussion from this thematic session in capacity development, and I invite our panelists to join us in the development of the proceedings, and perhaps to identify some future actions and on how we can explore the development of capacity development for best practices. There were also questions in the plenary yesterday that were touched upon by the presenters and the panelists. And I think that these are very useful points that we can include in the proceedings, and that we can treat as starting points in contributing to the goal of OBPS to document and promote wide use of BPs on capacity development. To end the session, may I just thank all our speakers. I'm not sure if Harry is still here, and Gabriel, my co-lead, I think he's still here. Yes, thank you very much for your wonderful presentations. And Brian, who has to run because he has some teaching responsibilities already. And of course to Harriet, Myla, and Eugenia, thank you very much for your very insightful views. And I look forward to more collaboration and working with some of you, if not all of you. And yes, can I ask one more thing? Can you turn on your video so we can have a group photo of all with all our participants in this session? Thank you very much. Let me just, okay, first frame, here we go. Okay, and second frame, here we go. Well, thank you very much for your time and for bearing with us in the overtime. Nice to see all of you, and yeah, we will keep in touch. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
A lot.
Hi, Gabriel.
Hello. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was
Thank you very much for your support.
Yeah, it was successful.
Yeah, somehow despite the technical issues, I was really worried that the
No, no,
other
no. It went well.
yeah, it went very well. I'm just